The moment my ex-husband looked the judge dead in the eye and said, "She's unstable. She lies to our daughter. I want full custody," I forgot how to breathe. He said it so calmly, like he was describing the weather. And the worst part, the judge looked like she believed him. I wanted to scream to defend myself, to say something, but nothing came out. Not a single word. I sat there frozen in that courtroom chair while the man who once told me he loved me painted me as a danger to the one person I lived for, my daughter Lena. Behind me she sat quietly, just 7 years old, holding my mother's hand, watching it all unfold. I could feel the custody slipping from my grasp, and then a small voice pierced the silence. "Your Honor, I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it." Everything stopped. Jason's face turned pale. The judge leaned forward, and I realized my little girl had just saved us both. Have you ever been called a liar when all you had was the truth? Have you ever been silenced in the moment you needed to be heard? Most, if yes, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. If this story hits close to home, subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more true stories that matter, because sometimes the truth doesn't come from a lawyer, it comes from a child who finally speaks. Before the courtroom, before the silence and the judge's stare, there was just us, me and Lena. Our apartment wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and creaky floors that complained after 10 p.m. But Lena called it our nest, said the pink curtains in her room made it feel like a cotton candy cloud. I'm Rachel Bennett, 34, freelance graphic designer and mom to a girl whose heart is bigger than any space we've ever lived in. Most nights, Lena would lie on her bed, stuffed penguin in her arms, and ask for 2 bedtime stories instead of 1. I always said yes. Not because I had time, but because I knew time with her was the only thing that ever really mattered. My mom, Diane, lived just a few blocks away. She showed love through action, not words. She'd bring over lasagna, scrub my bathroom when I wasn't looking, and say things like, "You're doing better than you think, Rachel." And for a while I believed her. After Jason and I divorced, I started something called the Truth Jar. I told Lena that any time she had a scary question or a confusing thought, she could write it down and drop it in the jar. Every night we'd read one together. Some were light. Why do people snore? Others shattered me. Will Daddy stop loving me if I stay with you? I answered every single one with the truth, even when it hurt, but Jason didn't like that. He said I was manipulating her. He wanted joint custody, on paper, but in practice, he wanted control. He questioned what I fed her, criticized how I braided her hair, got furious if I was even 2 minutes late to a drop-off, and after his weekends, Lena came home. Quiet, withdrawn. Sometimes she wouldn't talk to me at all until Tuesday. I documented everything. Texts, emails, voicemails. He called me unstable, said I was damaging our daughter emotionally, all while Lena heard him scream over spilled juice, saw him punch the kitchen counter because his charger was missing. But I never showed her those messages. I thought I was protecting her. One night after a tense handoff, Lena asked Mom, "Do you ever get scared around Daddy?" I hesitated. She looked down and whispered, "I do. But I think I'm not supposed to say that." I didn't sleep that night. I kept asking myself if trying to keep the peace was worth the cost of her silence. Then, 2 weeks later, I was served. Jason had filed for full custody, claimed I was erratic, said I lied to Lena, said I couldn't provide stability. Reading those documents made me sit down on the floor. My hands were shaking. My mom sat beside me, holding my wrist. She said softly, "You have the truth. That's enough. But in court, the truth doesn't shout, it whispers. And lawyers are trained to talk over it." Jason's attorney painted me as a woman unraveling. Mine told me not to cry, not to speak unless asked, to stay calm. But inside I was screaming. Lena watched it all, every tear I tried to hide. Every whispered, "It's going to be okay." When I wasn't even sure, I didn't know she was listening. I didn't know she was planning anything. She was just 7. But she understood one thing I had forgotten. The truth matters, and someone needed to hear it. Even if that someone was wearing a judge's robe. The weeks leading up to the custody hearing felt like living in a pressure cooker. Every smile Lena gave me, every question she asked, every silence I held it. Like it might be the last. I tried to act normal, kept our routines. Packed her lunch the same way. Braided her hair before school. But something inside me was cracking. Jason's lawyer was relentless. They submitted statements from his coworkers' neighbors who barely knew us, all claiming I was overwhelmed, emotional, unfit to co-parent. In one text, I told Jason I was exhausted after 3 deadlines in 1 week. They presented it in court as proof I couldn't handle motherhood. In another, I asked him not to raise his voice in front of Lena. That became manipulative behavior. I sat in my attorney's office reading through the exhibits, every word I had ever written twisted into a weapon, and Jason. He walked into court every time like it was a business meeting. Pressed navy suit, calm voice, smiling at the bailiff. The same man who once screamed at me over a lukewarm burger now looked like he should be giving parenting seminars. The court was stacked against me. Not legally, but emotionally, Jason knew how to perform. And I just looked tired. On the night before the hearing, I didn't sleep. Lena had fallen asleep holding Pepper, her stuffed penguin, and I just sat there beside her, watching her chest rise and fall. I whispered, "I'm so sorry." Not because I'd done something wrong, but because she had to live through this at all. The next morning, my mother pulled out the scarf she only wore to funerals or courtrooms. The one she called her armor. I wore flats because I knew my knees would shake. Lena wore a sunflower dress that was just a bit too small. She packed her pink school tablet in her backpack like always. I didn't think twice about it. Jason was already at the courthouse when we arrived. Same suit he wore to our rehearsal dinner, but the smile was hollow now. Sharp edges, cold eyes. He waved at Lena. She didn't wave back. When the judge, Honorable Judge Harmon, entered, the room shifted. She didn't say much, just nodded at Jason's lawyer and said, "You may begin." And that's when the dismantling of my character began. They listed every alleged misstep, my freelance schedule, my late-night emails, my therapy appointments. They played excerpts of voicemails where I sounded tired, broken. And they used it to prove I was dangerous to my daughter. I clenched the arms of the courtroom chairs so tightly my fingers went numb. Jason spoke like a man reading from a script. "She confuses our daughter. She makes me the villain. I'm not doing this to punish her. I just want to protect Lena." Protect, that word tasted like ash in my mouth. When the judge turned to me and said, "Miss Bennett, do you have a response?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. My voice cracked. My chest was a storm. All the words I rehearsed in front of the mirror evaporated. I felt myself slipping, losing. My lawyer said something mild, forgettable, but it wasn't enough, and I saw it in the judge's eyes. She was about to agree with them. That's when Lena moved. She let go of my mom's hand, stood up straight, her shoulders squared like a tiny soldier, and said, "Your Honor, I brought a video from Daddy's phone. I think you should see it." The entire courtroom turned. Jason's face went pale. The bailiff froze. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. She looked at Lena, 7 years old, wearing a dress one summer, too old, and said gently, "Excuse me," Lena lifted her tablet with both hands. "It's from last weekend." He didn't know I was awake, but I was. He said some things. I thought it might matter. No one moved. No one breathed. And in that moment, I didn't just feel the tide turn, I saw it. My daughter was about to change everything. Judge Harmon leaned forward slightly, her voice level. "Bring it here." The bailiff stepped over Lena, steady as I'd ever seen her, walked up the aisle, held out her tablet like it was a sacred object, and placed it in his hands. I didn't know what was on it. I didn't know when she recorded it. I didn't even know she knew how to use that feature. But I knew this. Whatever it wasn't just noise. It was the truth. And it was finally in the room. The bailiff handed the tablet to Judge Harmon. She tilted the screen toward herself and pressed play. At first, there was nothing, just background hum. A plate clinking, a chair scraping the floor. Then his voice. Jason's voice. Not the calm, composed version in front of the court, but raw, sharp, ugly. "You think you're so smart, huh? Go ahead, tell someone you'll end up in foster care. And don't think your precious mother can save you. She's pathetic." My heart dropped. A small gasp rippled through the gallery. The judge's eyes narrowed, lips tight. Lena's voice quiet, almost trembling. "I'm sorry," Jason snapped back. "Don't talk back. You're lucky I even let you come over. If you say a word, I swear." The judge hit pause. The silence afterward was louder than any shouting. Jason shifted in his seat. His lawyer whispered frantically beside him, but Judge Harmon raised her hand. "Enough." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She turned to Lena. "Where did this come from?" Lena answered without hesitation. "He left his phone on the couch. I heard him yelling, and I was scared. But I thought if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me. And Mommy." My eyes welled up. I wanted to run to her, to wrap her in my arms and tell her she should never have had to do any of this. But I stayed in my chair because this moment, this truth belonged to her. Jason tried to recover. "Your Honor, that recording is completely out of context. I was disciplining her." She was Judge Harmon didn't even let him finish. She turned her eyes to him sharp as a scalpel. "Mr. Blake, sit down." He did. The judge looked back at Lena. "Thank you for being brave. You may return to your seat." Lena nodded. Her steps were slower now, like the adrenaline was wearing off. She climbed into my mom's lap and leaned into her chest. My mother held her tight. Judge Harmon turned to me. "Miss Bennett, do you have anything else to add?" And this time I didn't hesitate. I didn't freeze. I met her eyes and said, "No, Your Honor, I think my daughter said it all." The judge nodded once, then leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes briefly, and said, "In light of this evidence, I'm ordering an immediate review of all custody arrangements. Until that is complete, full temporary custody will be granted to Miss Bennett. Mr. Blake will have supervised visitation only." Jason stood abruptly. "You can't be serious." The bailiff moved toward him. "Sir, you need to leave the courtroom." Jason looked like he wanted to fight it, but the video had done what my folders and emails never could. It showed the truth. He turned and walked out, his lawyer scrambling behind him. The courtroom emptied slowly. Some people whispered. Some avoided eye contact, but we stayed seated. Lena's head rested against my mom's shoulder. I knelt beside her, brushed hair from her face. "You were so brave," I whispered. She didn't say anything, just nodded. But I could see it in her eyes and her little shoulders, the weight of what she had carried. And what she had just laid down. She hadn't just told the truth. She had shown it, and she had done it alone, at 7 years old. She saved us both. We didn't leave the courtroom right away. Lena stayed curled up in my mother's arms, her small fingers wrapped around the edge of her stuffed penguin's flipper. The judge exited with quiet authority, but the echo of her decision still rang in the air. I just sat there absorbing it. Not victory, not celebration, just relief, like finally coming up for air after drowning in slow motion. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. After the courtroom cleared out, the court officers handed me the temporary custody order, plus instructions for supervised visits at a neutral facility. Jason would undergo an immediate psychological and parental evaluation. No contact with Lena outside of supervised hours. No more closed doors, no more unmonitored weekends, and Jason. He never looked back at us when he left, not once. That night we didn't go home. We went to my mother's house, our safe place, the kind of space that smelled like lavender and soup. Even in the middle of summer, Diane made chicken noodle, said she needed something to stir because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Lena sat at the kitchen table drawing in crayon, quiet but not withdrawn. When she finished, she walked over and handed me the page, 2 hands holding a heart, in her uneven 7-year-old letters she'd written. "Truth is brave," I cried quietly, not the kind of crying I'd done for months, fearful, hidden, muffled into a pillow. This cry was open, heavy, but free. The kind that releases something. Lena didn't say anything. She just leaned her head on my arm and stayed. That night, we reopened the truth jar. It had been sitting untouched for weeks. I shook it gently, handed it to Lena. "Want to pick one?" She shook her head and pointed. One note sat at the top. I unfolded it. My voice almost broke. It said, "What happens when the truth hurts people?" I looked up. "You wrote this." She nodded slowly, her voice soft. "I didn't want to hurt Daddy. I just didn't want to be scared anymore." I reached across the bed and took her hand. "The truth can hurt sometimes," I said, "but silence hurts more. What you did today didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. You protected us. That's not wrong, sweetheart. That's courage." She nodded, but I could tell she was still trying to hold everything inside. So we lay there in silence, and I let her fall asleep, knowing that for the first time in a long time, she was safe. In the weeks that followed, the court-appointed counselor completed Jason's evaluation. The report was damning. It detailed patterns of emotional instability, control issues, and a complete lack of empathy for Lena's emotional needs. Jason denied everything, of course, said the video was one bad night, but it was too late. The judge had already seen him unmasked, and Lena's voice, her bravery was louder than all his excuses. The final custody hearing happened 4 weeks later. Same courtroom. Same judge. But everything had changed. I wore the same dress, but this time my hands didn't shake. Jason looked smaller still in his navy suit, but somehow it didn't fit him the same anymore. His lawyer tried to fight, tried to argue for reconciliation and rehabilitated visitation, but the judge cut through the noise. Full physical and legal custody, she said, will be awarded to Miss Bennett. I closed my eyes just for a second. Not to block anything out, but to take it in. Jason would have supervised visitation twice a month. In a monitored center. No overnight stays. No last-minute pickups. No threats whispered behind closed doors. Lena's voice had done what my folders, documents, and timelines couldn't. She ended it, not with anger, but with truth. When we walked out of the courthouse that final day, Lena reached for my hand. I held it tighter than I ever had before. My mom walked on the other side of us, watching every parked car, as if Jason might appear. But he didn't even look our way. And I realized something: he didn't hold the power anymore. We did. That night we went to Lena's favorite diner, the one with red booths and smiley face pancakes. She ordered chocolate milk and quietly asked, "Is it over now?" I didn't lie. "It's safer now," I said. "We still have to grow through it, but we're not afraid anymore." She stirred her drink with her straw and smiled. "I'm glad I told, so am I." I whispered. Some nights I still replay the courtroom in my mind. Not Jason's face when Lena spoke. Not the panic in his lawyer's eyes, but Lena's voice, clear, steady, carrying more weight than any testimony given that day. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, she just stood. And somehow, in 7-year-old language, she did what grown-ups couldn't. She told the truth when it mattered most. After the final ruling, something shifted in our lives. It wasn't just legal, it was emotional. Lena started drawing again, but the drawings changed. Before, her pictures were full of closed doors, storm clouds, homes without windows. Now she drew trees with roots, kids holding hands, and bright skies that didn't feel imaginary. She even drew our truth jar and taped it to her wall. Every night before bed she reminded me, "Don't forget the jar." One evening I pulled out a folded note. In messy letters it read, "Do brave people still get scared?" I smiled, sat beside her. "Yes," I said, "but they don't let fear decide the ending." She leaned her head against my shoulder, said nothing, but I could feel her heart settle. 2 weeks later I started therapy again. Not because I was falling apart, but because for the first time in years I had space to feel what I'd survived. I'd spent so long trying to stay afloat. I forgot how to feel safe, how to be still, how to breathe. And Lena, she just kept being. Lena. Sharp-eyed, quietly brave, the kind of kid who asks the right question at the exact moment it can undo you. One afternoon I picked her up from school, and she climbed into the back seat with a frown. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked out the window. There was a girl in my class crying. She said she's scared to go home tonight. I gripped the steering wheel. "What did you say to her?" Lena shrugged. I told her maybe she should make a truth jar, then after a pause, "But only if it's safe to tell." 7, and already carrying the wisdom. Most adults take a lifetime to learn. Jason tried to contact us once, just once. He sent a short email to my attorney asking to appeal the custody arrangement. The court denied it. The counselor's report, the recording, Lena's statement, none of it could be brushed aside. He never tried again. Sometimes, when I pass the hallway mirror, I barely recognize the woman looking back. She's tired, yes, but she's stronger, not louder, not colder, just clearer. She knows that protecting your child isn't always about shielding them. Sometimes, it's about standing beside them when the storm comes. One night I pulled another note from the jar. It said, "Can kids protect grown-ups too?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked over at Lena, curled up with her penguin, her forehead pressed to her pillow. Then I whispered, "You did?" She smiled without opening her eyes. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always come roaring in. Sometimes it arrives in a sunflower dress, 2 sizes too small, with a pink school tablet held tight in both hands. It speaks softly, but it cuts through lies like light through fog. Lena didn't just save herself, she saved me. She reminded me that silence isn't safety and fear isn't love. That courtroom was supposed to be where I lost everything. Instead, it's where I got my daughter back. Not just legally, but emotionally. I didn't feel like I was losing her anymore. I felt like I was finally meeting her. And if anyone had asked me then, "What kind of mother are you?" I'd say this: I'm the kind who told the truth. Even when it hurt, and I raised a daughter who did the same. The final piece of this story didn't come from a courtroom. It came on a rainy Tuesday night with Lena curled up beside me on the couch, drawing in her notebook while I worked on client revisions. She looked up suddenly and asked, "Are we done being scared now?" I paused. Looked at her. I didn't want to give her a fairy tale answer, but I didn't want to give her fear either. "We're not done healing," I said, "but we're not afraid anymore, and not like before." She nodded like that made sense to her, and maybe it did. In the weeks that followed, Lena became even more curious. She asked about truth, about choices, about why some people yell and others stay quiet. And every time I answered honestly. Because she had earned that, I stopped trying to protect her from pain. Not because I wanted her to carry it, but because she had already proven she could walk through it with eyes open and her heart intact. Sometimes I think about all the other women sitting silently right now, in courtrooms, in lawyer offices, in their kitchens, reading custody papers they never saw coming. They're being told they're crazy, that they're emotional, that they're lying, and they don't know if anyone will believe them. I tell this story for them, because the truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's small and scared and 7 years old. But it matters. The day Lena handed that tablet to the judge, she did more than speak up. She broke a cycle, she opened a window that had been sealed shut for years. And in that moment, the world didn't get louder, it just got clearer. She didn't do it for revenge. She didn't do it to punish her father. She did it because she deserved peace, and so did I. The truth doesn't just protect us, it frees us. And if you're sitting in silence right now, wondering if the truth is enough, this is your reminder. It is. What did you think of this story? If you were in Rachel's shoes, how would you have protected Lena? Let me know in the comments and tell me where you're listening from. And if you believe Lena was the true hero, here comment, "Sarka truth is brave." Because sometimes it's not the strongest person in the room who changes everything. It's the quietest one, with nothing but courage in her chest and truth in her hands. I used to think being a good mother meant hiding the hard parts, shielding my daughter from every sharp edge. Now I know being a good mother means standing beside her through the storm and teaching her that her voice matters. Even when it shakes, even when the room tries to silence it, we still have tough days. But fear doesn't define us anymore. Jason doesn't define us. We are loud when we need to be quiet, when we choose to be. And most of all, we are free. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more real, raw, and powerful stories like this. Every single day. Stay brave, stay kind. And never forget the truth matters.